Last week in the message, which focused on Proverbs chapter 8, I talked about, as I mentioned before, how God has created his world in such a way that there is pattern and purpose, there are goals, there is beauty, that God created very intentionally, that it's not haphazard. I don't live in a world that has no design to it. I live in a world that was made in such a way that if we listen, look, and learn to what God has made and then apply it to our lives, then we are going to have fruitful and happy lives. Now, it doesn't mean that there will never be disappointments or sadness or hurt or pain, but there will be a more fruitful life if we live according to the way that God has created this world. And talked last week then about knowledge about God's creation, and then coming to an understanding of it, and then applying it to our lives, making good decisions. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have 4 examples of how to do that, right out of the book of Proverbs. And these 4 examples are sex and marriage, also lending and borrowing money, also work, labor, and finally dealing with hurtful and deceptive people. Now, all of these are together in like a nice little package in Proverbs 5 and 6. And the focus of these 4 examples, the focus is that God has created this world in such a way that we are to live with integrity and responsibility. Those are the key themes today: integrity and responsibility. Well, that first area is sex and marriage. And if you look at the back of the bulletin, I raised the question whether I should use that word. Children are probably watching, and the passage that we're going to read in a few moments out of Proverbs chapter 5 is, I'm not going to read some of the parts of it that are really explicit, but I raised the question, is that okay? And I'm deciding that it is, because we have to have a certain degree of openness and honesty off the pulpit. It's right in the Bible, Song of Solomon, and here in Proverbs chapter 5. In fact, if you look at Proverbs 2, 5, and 7, Solomon really gets into the whole matter of sexual relations, adultery, fornication, and that's why I say the theme this morning is integrity and responsibility. It really comes out in these chapters. Now, in particular, Solomon here in Proverbs chapter 5 is talking about marriage. And mainly what he says is, stay home, stay faithful, and be happy with your spouse. Now, those are my words, not Solomon's, but stay home, stay faithful, and stay happy with your spouse. And so what I need to do then is I need to learn what God has created about marriage and sexual relationships, and then apply that to life. And, like I said before, there will be happiness. There will be. It will be a happy life. Let's read. Now, as we read the passage, I want you to understand that the Bible often uses images and pictures and symbols and signs in order to get the message across. You've got to remember, these people did not have television. They didn't have a lot of artwork. They had to depend on words. And so a lot of picture words, and we're going to see that this morning. And as I said earlier, I left out some of the more literal passages because the Bible also speaks very literally at times. But what we're going to read this morning is very figurative about sexuality and marriage. So let's read it. It is Proverbs chapter 5, 15 through 18, which says, "Drink water from your own cistern, running water from your own well. Should your springs overflow in the streets, your streams of water in the public squares? Let them be yours alone, never to be shared with strangers. May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. You say, wait a minute, it's all about water and fountains and rivers. And see, this is the picture language. And now we're going to go through these verses again. I'm going to have them up on the screen in just a moment again. But the idea is that fountains and running water and so forth and drinking from your own streams and so forth, that's all symbolic language about intimate sexual relationships. And you can kind of read into those images a whole bunch of different things. You can kind of let your imagination go. But let's go back to verse 15. Verse 15 says, drink water from your own cistern, running water from your own well. Now let's keep that up there for a moment. See, in Palestine, there was a lot of desert area. It's a very dry area, not necessarily in every spot, but a lot of the places where people lived, it was very dry and desert. And so having your own source of water was very valuable. It was considered to be a very precious thing. Your own cistern where you could store some fresh water for a while. It's kind of like in Bangladesh, where we put in the pumps. We had donations to put in pumps. And last Sunday night, we saw pictures at the west location about the pond where people drew their water. It was actually green slime on the top where the animals would drink and bathe, and the people would drink and bathe, and now they have fresh water. It's amazing. I mean, it's like a miracle for these people. And so having your own fresh water was considered to be very valuable. Now, the idea here is that the image of drinking water from your own cistern, running water from your own well, it means have sexual relations with your own husband or wife. And that will be a very refreshing, a very renewing, a very exciting, a very beautiful, a very wonderful thing. Now, Solomon isn't saying that everybody has to do this. And I know the age group, for the most part, to which I'm speaking here in this room. I don't know about watching, but as people get older, this perhaps is not as significant or even present in their lives anymore. But if you read the whole passage, Solomon is focusing in on the younger people, the younger couples. And so if you are a younger couple watching or here in this room, younger person, what he's saying is, sex is good. It's refreshing. It's wonderful. It's great. It's exciting. Do it. See? Don't. Your own husband, your own wife, go for it. It's refreshing. Just like being in the desert and drinking water from your own cistern. Let's go to the next verse, verse 16, where he says, should your springs overflow in the streets, your streams of water in the public squares? He says, should you be off to the bar, picking up women or men? Should you be renting that hotel room, being off in the back seat of the car, off in the bedroom of a man or a woman that is not your spouse? See, that's what he's saying here. Should your springs overflow? And he's talking here again about sexual relations. Should your springs overflow in the streets, your streams of water in the public squares? And his answer is absolutely not. That's why I say his message here in terms of integrity and responsibility is stay home, stay faithful, and stay happy with your spouse. And then in verse 17, he says, let them be yours alone, never to be shared with strangers. Let your sexual experiences be yours alone, yours with your husband or with your wife, never to be shared with strangers. Never, and here again, off to the bar, off to wherever, you're picking up people or got the little thing going on the side. He says, absolutely not. Verse 18, he says, may your fountain be blessed. Now here again, you can read into that anything you want. This is picture language. May your fountain be blessed. I was reading the commentaries. They have all kinds of ideas on what these picture words mean. But the idea, again, is is a vibrant sexual life. And he says, may your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. Be blessed. In other words, it's not only going to be a happiness, it's not only going to be a refreshing thing, a beautiful thing, but there will also hopefully be children born, your fountain be blessed, that you will have a family. And so the message to those of you who are watching or here this morning, and I'll have more younger people in the second service, the message is enjoy intimacy. God created it. This is what we have to learn now from God's creation. When God created you to be a sexual being, he intended for you to have great, beautiful, wonderful experiences with your spouse. Be refreshed, be renewed, have a good time with your own, and you will be blessed. Like I said here, stay home, stay faithful, and stay happy with your spouse. Now, maybe some of you are going through some difficulty right now. Remember, we've got counselors here. And I want you to know that we have just changed our counseling room from over here, right behind the front counter in the main office. We've changed it to over here. We've moved our preschool into the other part of the building, and so the old preschool office is now our counseling office, and so people can come in what we call door A over here. So it's very private. It's not like over here where people would see you walk in front of everybody, but now it's very private. So Dr. Bill Curnow, if you want to have a counseling session with him or with Katie Fennell, our other counselor, you just give church a call and we'll hook you up with these people, and you can get some help in this area of intimacy or just marriage relationships or just personal issues in general. So that's example number one of God's creation and wisdom. Number two is lending, borrowing, and in this passage we're going to read the word pledge. And what that means in our language today is cosigning. That is, you put up a pledge that if the person who is borrowing money from the bank doesn't pay, you will pay for them. And so once again, how has God created his creation? He has created it with a certain kind of order and structure for finances. And we've talked before in the Dave Ramsey way about budgets and debts and credit cards and so forth, because there is a system that God has created, and I have to learn that. And this is also true when it comes to lending and borrowing and charging interest and being cosigners. Look at what it says now. We're in chapter 6, verses 1 through 6. It says, my son or daughter, if you have put up security for your neighbor, if you have shaken hands in a pledge for a stranger, that is, if you've cosigned, you have been trapped by what you said, ensnared by the words of your mouth. So do this, my son or daughter, to free yourself since you have fallen into your neighbor's hands. Go to the point of exhaustion and give your neighbor no rest. In other words, get out of this thing. He says, allow no sleep to your eyes, no slumber to your eyelids. Free yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, like a bird from the snare of the fowler. Get out of it. It's going to hurt you or destroy you. Another passage in Proverbs 11, verse 15. Whoever puts up security, and again, this is the co-signing idea. Whoever puts up security for a stranger will surely suffer, but whoever refuses to shake hands in a pledge is safe. It says, don't co-sign. Chapter 17, verse 18 in Proverbs. Chapter 17, one who has no sense shakes hands in a pledge and puts up security for a neighbor. You say, but wait a minute, aren't I supposed to love my neighbor? My neighbor comes to me and says, will you co-sign for me? Aren't I supposed to do that? But remember, it says, love your neighbor as yourself. You also have to take a look at yourself and say, can I afford this? Now, if you can afford to lose the money, go ahead and do it. I'm sure Solomon would agree with that. If you can afford to lose the money, go ahead. And if you lose that money, that you would not be angry and hateful. So if somebody says, would you co-sign? It's a loan for $1,000 and you can afford to lose that. And you go, you know, I really want to help this person. I hope I get it back, but if I don't, it's okay. Well, then go ahead and do it. But if somebody says, well, you co-sign for this house loan, $20,000, and you can afford to do that, but you can't afford to lose it, then you can't, because you have to love your neighbor as yourself. And here's where the word responsibility comes in. Remember I said integrity and responsibility. Now, this doesn't mean that Solomon doesn't want us to be generous. Yes, we have to be generous. Look at Proverbs chapter 11, verses 24 and 25. One person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. Generous persons will prosper, and whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. And so Solomon is saying, yes, be generous. Oh, yeah, be generous. We have a special offering tonight at the other church. It's the second Sunday offering. It's for Bangladesh. And I opened the mail. Somebody mailed in a check for $1,000. Whoa. They can afford to do it. They're going to be refreshed. They're going to be blessed. Okay? Now, maybe you can't afford 1,000, but perhaps, you know, the $100, you gave the $100. Well, it feels good. God says, I'm going to bless you. And so Solomon definitely is in favor of being generous, but we have to be careful. In fact, even lending money to people is okay in the Bible. In Deuteronomy chapter 15, verses 7 and 8, it says, if anyone is poor among your fellow Israelites in any of the towns of the land the Lord your God is giving you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted toward them. Rather, be open-handed and freely lend whatever they need. So lending is okay, again, if you can afford to lose it. And interestingly, the Bible also says not to charge interest to those who are part of your family, part of your group. And in the book of Exodus, chapter 22, it says, if you lend money to one of my people among you who is needy, do not treat it like a business. Charge no interest. So if your son or daughter needs some extra money and you're going to lend it to them, don't charge interest. And again, if you do that, make sure you can afford to lose it without being angry. And that's responsibility, and that's wisdom. I wrote down here, it says, ready to help with no gain, ready to lose with God's peace. Love with boundaries. Love with boundaries. The third area is work. Here again, God has created work in his creation, part of the system. Put Adam and Eve to work. They had to take care of the garden, and that's work. I'll tell you, that is work. You sweat a lot. Dad named the animals. And so work is important. I got out a little book that I have. It's called Work by the late Dr. Lester D. Koster. Some of you will remember that name. It's a nice little book, and in this book he says that work gives meaning to life. It is the key, he says, to a satisfying life. Work is the key to a satisfying life. Work gives meaning to life, and he says, not only because we're using our gifts and our talents and so forth, using our time wisely, but also because we are serving others in our work. And when we serve others, we serve God. So in your work, no matter what you do, on the assembly line, driving a truck, teaching school, preaching sermons, taking care of the kitchen, whatever you're doing, you're serving others. Elida made a great apple crisp dessert yesterday, and I've already eaten half of it. She was serving others. Thank you very much. And when we serve others, we serve God. We love God as we serve others, and therefore, it makes sense when St. Benedict, one of those great medieval monks, said, to work is to pray. To work is to pray, because I am using my life in service to others, which in turn is service to God. You say, yeah, but nobody even knows I exist over there at the factory. And so I bake a loaf of bread. I mean, I'm serving, what's the deal here? And DeCoster has an interesting little quote that I thought I would read for you. He says, unless a lot of workers just like ourselves give themselves in the making of the chairs we're now sitting on, unless they did that, unless workers gave themselves in making these chairs, we'd be sitting on the floor. Unless, of course, nobody ever invested in making the floor. Then we'd be sitting on the grass out in the backyard. Unless nobody ever planted or mowed the grass. In a world without work being done by countless and sometimes even anonymous someones, we'd all be Tarzans swinging from the trees. So work is the way that we serve. Work is the way that we love. And it includes, even though sometimes it hurts because the body gets worn out, because we're frustrated, or maybe the system doesn't do us justice, but generally speaking, Solomon says in our work, we will be blessed. Look at Proverbs 12, verse 11. Proverbs 12, verse 11 says, those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense. And chapter 14, verse 23. All hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. So when I understand my work, whatever it is, I understand that I'm using the gifts and talents that God created in me, and I'm serving others, and thereby serving God, and I'm part of a huge network that is making this world and this community and this life possible. Fourth area, final area. People who are troublemakers. You see, when God created the world, he created it in such a way that there should be harmony, pattern, system, order, decency, and for human beings, fairness, justice, and love. That's the way he made the world. Not haphazard, but he made it that there would be harmony. And so when I understand that, when I learn that, here again, when I learn how God is created, and I practice that, I practice fairness and decency and politeness and love and caring and so forth. When I practice that, there's peace with my neighbors, with my family members, with my friends, people in church. And so this set of verses talks about people who don't live that way. They create trouble. They create trouble. And in here we're going to see also a bunch of symbolism, and we don't understand all of the symbolism, but we can get the idea. This is did we read the one on work? I don't think we did. Did we read the one on work? I'm getting so many okay, let's read this one. Chapter 6, 12 through 15. Chapter 6, 12 through 15. The work one, by the way, if I didn't read that, is chapter 6, 6 through 11. This one talks about people who are troublemakers and scammers, like on the telephone. It says a troublemaker and a villain who goes about with a corrupt mouth, okay, that's like liars and gossipers and so forth, who winks maliciously with his eye and signals with his feet and motions with his fingers. Now, we're not sure exactly what this is. Who winks maliciously with his eye, signals with his feet, and motions with his fingers. That could be giving somebody the finger, but I don't know. But who plots evil with deceit in his heart, always stirs up conflict. Therefore, disaster will overtake him in an instant and suddenly be destroyed without remedy. Now, we didn't understand some of that symbolism, but the idea is that there's people who are doing things to hurt you. And I thought maybe some of the symbolism that we would have in our society, in our culture, would be like, okay, you're talking to somebody, and somebody's standing behind you, and you're telling this person in front of you about some of your problems. And behind you, somebody is going, oh, mocking you because, oh, you've got such a sad story. Or maybe, the flipping the bird, giving the finger, standing behind you, and while you're talking to somebody is doing a gesture of disgrace behind your back, or talking behind your back. Remember what it said in there about the evil mouth, gossip, telling lies about people. And so friends, neighbors, whatever, putting you down and making gestures or symbols or signs that are going to make you look stupid or silly. And why do people do that? They do that because they want the power. They want the attention. Psychologists really think that they're having a problem with their own self-worth. And so I'm going to increase my self-worth by putting you down. But scammers would be included in here too. I think I told you once before, the phone rang at our house. We still have a landline. The phone rang, and I answered it. And it was my grandson, our grandson. He's an adult. He lives in another state. He said, "Hi, Grandpa, this is Andrew." And see, this is what scammers do to get money. I'm in jail, or I'm alongside the road, my car broke down, can you send me $500 kind of thing? And there's some people who are so gullible that they fall for it. So I began to ask him questions, because he doesn't telephone me, and not that he should, but he. And so I said, "Well, where are you right now?" And ask him their middle name. What's the name of your dad's pet cat? And if they can't answer, and as soon as I began asking questions, hung up. But the thing is, we have to be worldly wise. We have to be worldly wise, because there are people who don't have integrity and who don't have responsibility, and so we have to be worldly wise if we're going to be happy. And this is another example then of learning about the world that God made. He made it that there would be peace, harmony, justice, and yet not all people do that. And I have to learn that those people are out there, and that they either have to be rejected, I can't hang around with them anymore, or confronted. Hey, stop doing that if I'm going to be happy. So what we've done this morning is we've looked at 4 examples of last week's lesson from Proverbs 8. Learn about God's world, about sexuality, about money and lending, about work, and about the fact that there are malicious people out there. And as I learn and apply, I'm going to have a happier life. I'm going to have a fruitful life, because that's the way that God has made me and the world around me. Even though there's sin, that basic creation pattern is still there. And so as I realize that that I am redeemed, and that Jesus has given me a new life, and that the Lord God has given me a scripture, and He's given me insight into the fact that He is the Creator, and I bring that all together. Lord Jesus, open my eyes, as we sang last week, that I may see glimpses of truth you have for me. Be my vision. Thank you, Jesus. Or as we sang this morning, I've decided to follow Jesus. And then appreciating and learning about the creation that Jesus has made, and then living in it according to the way that He made it, brings glory to Him and joy to me and to you. Proverbs, great book.